Hello everyone, welcome back to Kalam Academy, and we will be doing today the Indian polity and governance topic, that is the part of your GS paper 2 mains point of view, right. And this section is a small section. It will be we will be doing this in 3 lectures. Today will be our first lecture, so let's start it. When we are talking about the governance part, you must have seen in the main syllabus that it covers topics like the government policy as intervention, developmental process and development industry, role of NGOs, SSG and other charity and donor organizations. Similarly, important aspects of governance like the accountability, transparency, then e-governance, right, citizen charter, and finally the role of civil services in a democracy. In the first class, we will be doing with this topic, that is government policy and intervention for development in various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. Okay. And when you see the pattern, the trend of marks which is coming from the governance section in GS paper 2, then you can see from since 2013 to 22, near about you can say 40 to 50 marks on an average is being asked from this topic, and this 40 to 50 marks topics is very easy to handle if you know the basics, if you know the basic structure of the answer writing, if you know the basic theme of these topics, then that can be easily tackled, and we will be discussing that only. Means it will be like a recipe, how you will apply same thing, same recipe in other questions, right. जैसे सब्जी बनाने के लिए आपको कुछ सर्टेन मसाला ही चाहिए होते हैं, right, हल्दी चाहिए, नमक चाहिए, all these things चाहिए, but using that you can make different types of sabjis, right. So similarly we will be seeing this so that you can handle any type of the question. If you see the mains trend analysis, then 40 to 50 marks question, last in 2022 it was 35 marks question, before that it was 45, before that 55, and even some years it has been the weightage has been up to 75 marks. So on an average you can expect 40 to 50 marks from this section in 2023 mains. Okay. So let's come to the topic. What is public policy? What do you mean by public policy? Public policy is some policies which is made for the public, or which is made by the government, right, for the implementation of certain issues, for the solving of certain issues and for the implementation of some programs or some schemes, right, that is public policy. Now this public policy can be of different types depending on its nature. The types of the public policy can be regulatory. Now what is regulatory public policy? Now you must have seen different regulatory bodies like the RBI, like the SEBI. So they are the regulatory bodies which is functioning under different heads, under different dimensions. For example, RBI is working for the monetary policy, right. So they are regulating that. Similarly, there are other regulating bodies, for example IRDAI, TRAI, right. So these are regulatory bodies. So this policy which are being framed for the regulation of something, for the regulation of some rules and regulations, for the regulations of some activity, then that is regulatory public policy. Okay. Then another is restrictive, means if the policy is of the nature that it want to restrict something, it wants to restrict the flow, it want to create some burden in the flow of economy, then it is restrictive in nature. For example, like this free trade agreement you are doing for the free flow of these goods, but there is some trade barrier, right. So that trade barriers stop this free flow of the goods and services. Obviously that is for the welfare of the country only, that is for the profit of the country only. For example, phytosanitary norms, these are restrictive policies which are there to restrict the flow in the economy, restrict the flow of some goods, certain goods or items in the economy, right. Similarly, there is facilitating policy, public policy. These public policy are such in nature which facilitates the process, which facilitates the input, which facilitates the outcome. For example, ease of doing business. Now, ease of doing business is done so that this startup cultures can be brought up, so that this foreign direct investments can be brought up, can be increased, foreign portfolio investment can be included, right. So, these are facilitating policies. So, these can be the types of policy. Now, what can be the nature of the public policy? We must see that. Now, nature of the public policy should be goal oriented. What does this mean? That before framing any policy, you should know what is the goal which you want to achieve. For example, if in the child mortality rate, infant mortality rate, you want to achieve a sustainable development goal of 70 by the year 2030. So, if you know this goal, that by year 2030 we have to reach the infant mortality rate or child mortality rate to 70 life per 1000 birth, per 70 lives per 1 lakh birth, right. Then that is goal oriented public policy. Collective actions, there are phases. First, public policy is formulated, then public policy is implemented, then public policy is evaluated, right. And there is some feedback mechanism also, so that better public policy can be framed later on, right. So, this is collective action is required. What does this mean? That from the state level, from the local level, from the central level, at every point of there should be some inputs, so that a better policy can be framed, so that the policy can be implemented in better manner. So, there should be collective action. Decision making should be done by the concerned authority regarding the public policy, so that the policy and decision making requires lots of questionnaires. From where to launch the public policy, means when to launch the public policy, what should be the targeted area, what should be the targeted age group. So, all these things should be there. So, these are the decisions which a policy maker need to make, right. So, there should be decision making, and a public policy can be positive or negative. For example, in last slide we have seen that it can be either restrictive or it can be either facilitative. So, if it is restrictive in nature, then public policy can be said that negative nature. It is, see, this restrictive nature, or by looking at the positive and negative, you should not see that some policy is negative in character, some policy is negative in the character, because it is the demand for the country. Therefore, such kind of policy is being formulated, right. Then, if you see the characteristic, what should be the characteristic of the public policy? There is complex process. No policy can be formulated without complex processes, because even India is having a population of 1.4 billion population, right, and it is having unity and diversity. So, to cater the needs of each and every sections, there are several complex problems which need to be solved, and therefore, complex processes, this public policy has to go through complex things, and therefore, it is a complex process, it is not a easy process. Then there are various components. Who will do the regulation thing, who will be the authority, right. who are the concerned who are the beneficiaries, right. So there are so many factors which need to be considered, and for that matter there are various components. For example, when a law is being made, for example, like this protection of child right, related to protection of child right, some law is being made, framed, then you need to consider several components. How a police officer will handle a child, how the society should handle a child, right. So these are the various components which need to be looked at while framing a public policy. Then it should be futuristic in nature. Why? Because you are framing policy not for today, but maybe for the 1 year, maybe for the 5 year, or maybe for the next 50 years. So by looking at the changing environment in the society, you need to make the policy in such a manner that it should cater the need of the future. For example, sustainable development goals. For example, this INDC, right. So you have framed some law from some policies regarding that, so that you can achieve such goals, isn't it? So it should be futuristic in nature. Then a public policy should be dynamic. Just now we had seen that a feedback mechanism is there. For example, this is public policy, so there should be some feedback, right. So with this feedback, this public policy can be changed, right. From the time to time, public policy can be changed according to the situation. Therefore, it should be dynamic in nature, it should not be rigid, right. Then different contributions from the different section of the society, from the different administration, from the different legislator, from the different judicial officers should be there to formulate a policy, right. Similarly, participative and consultative. Look, if you are formulating a policy which is being implemented at the grassroots level, which is being implemented at the local level, and if you are not consulting the local level authorities, if you are not consulting district magistrate or the local panchayat or the gram panchayat, then how it is justified that you will frame a good policy without consulting them. So to frame a good policy, you need to have proper knowledge about the grassroots problems, what they are facing, and therefore it should be participative and consultative in nature. Decision making, we have talked that this decision making is very important, because ultimately the policy makers need to decide at certain point of time that in how many, for example, is aspirational district program is being launched, then in how many aspirational district program is to be launched, whether it should be launched in 100 districts, whether it should be launched in 600 districts. So such kind of decision should be, what should be the parameters on which this aspirational district should be identified, right. So such parameters should be included. Then the major guidelines, which should be, major guidelines should be there in the public policy formulation as well as implementation, right. Then achieving public interest, this should be the motive. India is a country, India is a socialist country. So ultimately our motive is to have the welfare state, right. We are Article 38 suggests that we are a welfare state, right. So ultimately achieving the public interest should be the main goal in a public policy, right. And it should be the best possible means what? That for example, if you are formulating some policy for the betterment of society in some tribal areas, right. So you should consider each and every aspect, for example, the isolation of the tribals, for example, their distinct culture, right. So these things should be considered while you frame the policy. Therefore, this should be the best possible means should be that any process which is to mainstream the tribal population into the mainstream society should be slow in nature. Do not make it haphazard or hurry, right. So, this can be there. Now, there are different stages, because mainly there are 3 stages, that is policy formulation, policy implementation and policy evaluation. But breaking these steps into further more sub steps, we can say that there should be first issue identification. First you need to find out what is problem, then only you will give it solution, right. First you need to find out, as a civil servant, as a civil service aspirant, you need to find out in which areas you are weak, and once that area is identified, then you can work upon that, right. Similarly, some issue identification should be there. For example, how a person with disability is facing some issue in our society. So, that issue should be identified first, right. Then the policy objective and boundary definition, that what should be the objective, how will you facilitate person with disability, right. Then what would be the boundary definition, means who all will be eligible, whether it will be from the 0 to 18 years of the age, or whether it will be from the 18 to 16 years of the age, who will be getting benefited from that policy. Then design policy based on this identification, based on this policy objectives, design your policy, that for how many months you will be implementing such programs or some such schemes, what are your targets, what do you want to achieve, right. Because if you do not quantify the things, then how will you judge the process of development or process of growth, right. For that matter, there should be policy design. Then policy testing and analysis. Many a times you must have seen that during medical trials, this medical trials is first done on animals, then medical trials is when it is successful on the animals, then medical trials is done on the certain groups on human beings, and when it is gets successful, then larger group it is being tested, and then 3 round of the test is there, right. So, similar type of things, policy testing and analysis is very much important. Policy finalization and acceptance, once it is done, that once it is said that policy in the policy testing, once it has been found that the policy is good enough, then policy finalize the policy and accept it for the larger masses, right. Then comes the policy. This was the policy formulation. Now, this is the policy implementation part. In policy implementation, you will be implementing the policy directly to the local level, directly to the state level or the national level, depending upon what kind of the policy it is. For example, if some policy is regarding the disaster management, so there is also National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, District Disaster Management Council, right. So, at different level you will be implementing your policies, right. Then policy evaluation and monitoring, whether the policy is being implemented properly or not. If it is not properly implemented, what are the issues, why it is not being implemented. So, such evaluations should be there. There should be proper monitoring, that whether the concerned authority which has been allocated for the implementation of the policy, whether they are performing in good manner or not. So, such evaluation, such monitoring should be there. Then there should be some policy learning, readjustment and innovation, and based on that policy learning and innovation, you can formulate, you can give a feedback to the policies, and better policy can be framed next year, right. So, this is the stages of public policy. I hope you get it. Please remember this, and please use this you can directly use this diagram when you are writing any question for public policy. Okay. Now another topic, problem associated with policy formulation. We will first see what are the problems associated with policy formulation, then we will see what are the problems associated with policy implementation, and we will for both the policy formulation and implementation regarding all these issues, we will also see what are the solutions for that. Now, when this policy formulation things is there, see whether you are formulating a policy or any government schemes, for example, farmers bill, for example, Manrega Act, for examples, this Janni Suraksha scheme, Janni Sishu Suraksha scheme, Matritva scheme. So, in all this scheme, the basic structure would be this one which I am discussing, and try to fit this structure in different questions by giving some suitable examples, by giving some suitable data, facts and examples, right. For example, mostly the major problem associated with the policy formulation, it is top down approach. At the top, people are living in this AC wall room, in AC room, and they are trying to solve the issues which is being faced at the village level, which is being faced at the block level. So, most of the time what is there, ki they do not know the exact problem which is being faced at the block level or the village level, right. So, top down approach of policy formulation is very bad in nature. What should be there? There should be bottom up approach. We will see the solution after some time. Then there is over centralization. You must have seen there was planning commission before. So, what this planning commission used to do? They used to plan for whole country for the next 5 years, and most of this time this planning commission was a central agency and used to plan for every states, even for the every districts, right. So, this was over centralization. So, therefore, planning commission has been abolished, and now Niti Aayog has been established. Now, Niti Aayog acts as a think tank. Now, this think tank, what does this does? This think tank first function it perform is it deliberate on several things, it consolidate data survey, and based on that some decision is being made, plus it follows the principles of bottom up policy. Means what is the problem of the at the local level, that should reflect that the solution should reflect in the public policy. Then the populist policy. You must have seen in several newspapers that when there is election time, then there are several loan waivers, TV is being distributed, mobile tablets is being distributed, laptops is being distributed. So, what is this? These are populist policies. These are just for the vote, these are a vote bank politics, right. So, this is also a problem, because if you are doing a vote bank politics and you are just distributing things at random or without any planning, just to gain vote, then it has inflationary nature. It is inflationary nature, and then overall economy becomes inflationary. Other things, other goods, other items means costlier, right. Then non-participative. There is no participation of local government, there is no participation of state government. If some policy is formulated at the central level, even at the if some policy is formulated at the state level, then there is no participation of the local or panchayat level or gram panchayat level, right? Even the gram panchayat or sarpanch level is participated, then people's participation is not there, citizen centric governance is not there, right? So non participative in nature. Then there is lack of debates and discussion. The policy formulation or policy this policy formulation part is done in a hurry, right? And therefore there is lack of debates and discussion whether this should be, some policy should be implemented or not. Do you think that if farmers should have been consulted while framing the farmers law, then there means before formulating this policy there would have been any such protest in India, right? Obviously not. So there is lack of debates and discussion between various stakeholders. Another point is there is lack of survey and data. In every aspect there is no government survey or government data available. For example, for many years even how much employment has been generated, how many person are unemployed, right? How many person are disguised unemployed. So these things has not been provided. So without survey, how will you provide job opportunities? How will you create job, means how will you create jobs in an economy, right? So most of the time this without survey and data it is there. The policy is being formulated. Then one important aspect is economy is considered over environment, because economy is taken as growth and development, and environment is taken as a hindrance to that growth and environment. For example, if you see for the Western Ghat, if you see the Madhav Gadgil formula, then it said that whole Western Ghat should be declared as a eco-sensitive zone. But government was then not happy with this decision, with this recommendation. So Kasturi Rangan committee came and it drastically reduced the ecologically sensitive zone in the Western Ghat area. Near about 37, it recommended for the 37% of the Western Ghat should be considered as the eco-sensitive zone, right? So economy is preferred over environment while formulating policy. That is very bad. It should be sustainable in nature. The economic sustainability can only be there if there is environmental sustainability, right? Then there is gender insensitization. We have the term gender budgeting, but still gender insensitization is there while formulating policies, because most of the time genders, the female gender are not considered at par with male, and therefore the policies are not in favor of gender females. So there are gender insensitivity. Missing expertise. What is this? Because there may be some political executives who is the ultimate decision maker for any policy, and if that person does not have any expertise in the field in which this public policy is being framed, then obviously there are higher chances that bad quality of policy would be framed, right? So that is there. Then short term benefit as long term goals. For example, these political executives, MLAs, MPs, these are in power for only for 5 years. So their whole motivation or their whole goal is that within 5 years some achievement should be there, or within 5 years they only target for 5 years. They do not target for next 20 years or next 40 years, because they just want to win elections, right? So most of the time there are short term goals is being fulfilled, but long term targets are not being fulfilled, they are not taken care of, right? So these are the problems associated with policy formulation. Now, we will see what are the problems associated with policy implementation, right? Because after policy formulation, there is need to properly implement it. Only then the targeted beneficiaries, only then targeted person will get enough benefit. So, what are the issues? First, policy again policy implementation, it's centralized policy process. Because of the centralized policy process, most of the powers is also centralized to the central authority while implementation also. But what should be there? The most of the power should be delegated. There should be delegation, so that the policy should be implemented at the grassroots level. The policy should be implemented at the local level, at the state level, or even at the central level. So, concerned authorities should be given enough power to or enough teeth to implement the policy. That is not happening. Then there is unionization of bureaucracy. What does this mean? Because most of the powers is being held by this all India services or this central services. You are also preparing for IAS and IPS. So, these are the central services, these are the all India services, or these are the grade A services, central services, who are mostly responsible for implementing the public policies. And they are obviously, you have been selected by what? UPSC. What is U in UPSC? Union, right? So, there is unionization of bureaucracy. At the local level, at the lower level of the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats or the political or the these executives are not motivated enough to implement the policy, because ultimately it is the means higher authority which will reap all the benefits, all the credits, right? Then there is political interference. Lots of political interference are there in the public policy. For example, if there are some policy is there to make roads, right, then political executives will want, political executives or political party leaders would want that first the roads near to their location, near to the house should be made, right. Then most of the times this policy implementers bureaucracy gets call from the higher political executives that even some criminals are being released because of the nepotism, because of the favoritism, right. So, there are political interference. Now, interest group politics, there are various interest group. It can be the religious groups, it can be the linguistic groups, or it can be some racist group, right. So, these groups are there whose core interest is to satisfy the interest of their certain groups, right. And for that matter, there is clashes among the groups, and because of this intergroup politics, most of the times policy implementation gets delayed, right. Then the lack of adequate institutional capacity. What does this mean? That you do not have enough infrastructure, you do not have enough institutions, you do not have enough employees who are involved in the policy implementation, right. So, because of this lack, the policy is not being implemented. Most of the time you can see that the government offices are working at the 30 to 40% of the total capacity. So, you need that those government officials, they need to perform all the duties which 100% employee would have been performed, but they are only 30 to 40%. So, policy implementation gets delayed, right. Then the lack of personal and financial resources, there is not enough allocation of funds. If there is allocation of fund, then there is not timely release of the fund, right. If there is timely release of the fund, then there are issues of corruption. So, these are the problems which is being faced while the policy implementation. Time pressure is also there, as we have discussed that these political parties or political executives, they are they are framing policy on the basis of short term goals, that is only for the 2 years, only for the 5 years, not more than 5 years. So, they give some timeline that within this year, by this year some policy should be implemented, some program should be implemented, right. So, because of this time pressure plus lack of personal resources, the implementation of policy becomes more tough, right. Then the lack of administrative will and motivation. There is no this in the bureaucracy, mostly it is not merit based, but the thing is at the maybe at the starting level it is merit based, but at a higher level, at the promotional level, that is mostly not the merit based promotion, rather it is everyone will be getting promoted of some certain batch if certain year has been passed, right. Therefore, there is lack of administrative will. No political executives want to take extra effort or are so motivated enough that they want to implement the policy on time in better manner, right. Then the lack of public involvement, most of the times public are neglected, and when public are neglected, then policy does not get implemented in proper manner. For example, if there is some distribution of food items, right, if publics are in distribution of food items during disaster management, during disaster. So, if publics are involved, then this can be implemented in better manner, right, because administration cannot have administration may not have enough personal or enough human resources to do that, right. Then inadequate resources, we have already discussed this point. So, these were the problems associated with the policy implementation, right. Now, another topic, another things we will be taking, that is measures needed for the policy formulation. How policy formulation should be done? It would be just the opposite of what were the problems or the issues, right. If there is top down approach, then there should be bottom up approach, isn't it? See, these things, this structure will be applied in every question. You need to think according to this. You need to generate points, whatever may be the policy. For example, the policy can be regarding education, whether right to education is being implemented properly or not. This can be the question. So, you need to think whether this education system, there is lack of infrastructure, whether there is lack of human resources, whether there is some populist measures going on, right. So, you should think like this, and in the solution you can think the measures which we are talking right now, you can think in that lines. For example, the measures, there should be bottom up approach. And what does this bottom up approach? The people from the village should give their issues, highlight their issues to their gram panchayat. All the gram panchayat should highlight this to the panchayat head, then panchayat head to the district at the district level, and from the district, all the district level, there should be collection of issues, and that should reach at the state level. From all the state there should be collection of issues, and that should reach at the central level, and at the central level, looking at all these issues and all these problems, the policy can be formulated. Look, you will say that this will be very cumbersome, this will be very complex, but there are very high chances that one village which is facing some issues, for example, water shortages, underground water shortages, for example, sanitation problem, whatever they may be facing the issues in the Jharkhand, there are high chances that the same issues will be there in the Maharashtra, or same issues may be there in the Madhya Pradesh. So there will be very less issue, but the policy formulation should be bottom up approach, not top down approach, or the centralized authority should be taking decision on everything, right? Because there are high chances that they will not be knowing exact problems being associated. Then there should be decentralization, which we have talked, that following the bottom up approach, there should be the concerned authority given at the different level. Concerned authority should be allocated to formulate some policy based on the issues which lower grade, based on the issues at their level, right? And after formulating such policy, they can forward to the central government. So decentralization of the policy formulation can be there. Then there should be appropriate budget allocation, because without appropriate budget allocation, it is very highly unlikely that the policy implementation would be good, or better kind of the policy formulation can be there. Policy monitoring and evaluation. While formulating the policy itself, there should be provisions that who will be monitoring, who will be the authority who will be monitoring policy at the different level, at the central level, at the state level, at the local level, and who will evaluate, who will audit, whether there should be social audit in the public policy or not, right? So such things should be done at the policy formulation level only. Then the survey and data collection should be done before formulating policies, because once you have sufficient data, once you exactly know who are the beneficiary, what are the targeted groups, what are the age groups, what are the zones to be targeted, only then you will be able to formulate a good policy, right? Then there can be legal backing. For example, right to work. Right to work is a constitutional provision, right? But that has been given a statutory backing through MGNREGA Act. So if some policy is so important, some policy is very important in nature, then it should get legal backing. There should be some acts regarding this, there should be some rules and regulations regarding this, and if required, then there can be constitutional amendments regarding this, right? So legal backing should be there. People participation is must, because without participating people, how would you know that with better policy is being formulated? If farmers would have been if farmers participation would have been ensured before framing the farmers law, right, free farm law, then such protest would not have happened, because in the starting itself, while planning or while framing the policy itself, farmers would have disagreed with the central government that no such law should be coming up, right? So people participation is must. There should be gender sensitization, because still there are huge gender equality in our society, and if we need to fill this gap of gender inequality, then we need to have gender sensitive policy or gender sensitive policy formulation, right? Then short term and long term goals, there should be both short term goals and long term goals, because a problem can have solution for the short term immediate solution or some long term solution. For example, that while COVID pandemic, right, while COVID pandemic, the immediate solution was to give some kind of employment to every migrant laborers who is returning back to their hometown. So, this was a short term measures. They can be given some small work at the in short term, but long term there should have been infrastructure development, there should have been economic growth, there should have been economic growth of the region. Such employment generation should be there, which should be permanent in nature, so that these migrant laborers need not to migrate again once COVID pandemic has ended, right. So, both short term and long term goals should be there while formulating policies. Then the policies should be sustainable. Such policies should not be framed which will exploit the natural resources in very small point of time, right. So, it should be sustainable in nature, and sustainable policy formulation is very much required, because ultimately there is a need of sustainable development. This climate change needs to be reversed, global warming need to be reversed. So, all these things need to be considered while formulating the policy, right. Now, we will see what are the measures which are required for better policy implementation. Once again, all these points are generic in nature. You can implement, you can take up these points in any kind of questions related to public policy implementation. In any kind of schemes, you can think on these lines, and you can collect some examples, some data and quote there. Support your arguments with that data, support your arguments with that facts, that is more than sufficient. Overall, you should think the policy implementation portion in this manner, right. Again, even at the policy implementation, there should be decentralization, just like the policy formulation, because ultimately if it is a policy for the welfare of the society, if it is a policy for the welfare of the public, then it would be better that it is implemented in a decentralized manner. The authority which are involved in this are also decentralized. The points will be similar in nature, but you need to frame your arguments in such a manner that it should fit according to the demand of the question. For example, no political interference we had also seen as a measures in the policy implementation, policy formulation, and also in the implementation. So, no political interference should be there in the implementation part, because for example, if some criminal activity is going on and some honest officers has captured some criminals, and it is he is somewhat related to some political executive, they directly get the call to release them. So, if such activity happens, if nepotism, favoritism is happening in the while policy implementation, then no policy can be implemented in a better manner, in a good manner, right. So, there should not be any political interference. Citizen participation is must for implementation of the policy, because ultimately this is it, the policy has been framed for the welfare of the citizens, and if citizen participation is there, any policy can be implemented in, but in better manner, right. Then there should be convergence of schemes. What does this mean? This means that there may be another schemes or another policy which is related to this policy. For example, if you are uplifting a poor from the below poverty line, then this is not only the responsibility of food department that they should supply food through the PDS system, right. It is also the department of education, health, means it is also the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Housing, Ministry of, so all these things should be converged. Overall, if you have to uplift a person from the below poverty line, they should get the children should get a good quality education in the schools, should get a good quality hospital facilities, right. So all these things, so all the government schemes should converge together to implement a policy, right. Then there should be social audit. Social audit we will be discussing it in details in next class, but for just now you can understand that these are the audits which are being concerned by the society, right. That, for example, in MGNRAGA, Manrega Act, social audit is compulsory. That means that people is participating in auditing the government schemes, the Manrega schemes, whether it is being implemented in proper manner or not. So such social audit should be made compulsory for other government policies also, so that there should be some it would be easy to evaluate whether the policy is being implemented properly or not, right. And this social audit will give a good feedback for the formulation of next policy, or for the even this policy can be tweaked by looking at the feedback. Then awareness generation. If you are launching some programs or some policies, but the targeted groups or the targeted people or the targeted citizens are not aware enough, that then there is no point. For example, if for the population control policy you are targeting the youth that they should use contraceptives, but people are not aware enough that they should be using contraceptives and what are the use of this contraceptive, why there is need to have population control. If such awareness is not there, then no such policy which is there for the implementation of for the control of the population will be implemented in proper manner. Because you can see that we had the National Family Planning in 1952, but in 1950 to 1980 there was population explosion in India. That means this National Family Planning policy 1952 did not get implemented in proper manner. And one of the most important cause for that is there was lack of awareness, right. Then the effective policy evaluation, policy implementation, it is the part of some part of is also the policy evaluation, because some feedback mechanism need to be provided, right, so that policy can be implemented in better manner. There should be sufficient fund allocation. This is must, because unless and until you have fund, no policy can be implemented in good manner. Then there should be training and skill set. This should be provided to the person who are directly involved in implementing the policy, right. For example, Right to Education Act. Right to Education, in the Right to Education Act, there has been now grading system, right, and this even most of the teachers are not trained enough that how this grading system works, what are the efforts they need to make, and how they need to judge the children on what basis, right. So, training should be there, skill set should be there, then there should be accountability and transparency, because whether the policy is implemented properly or not, how would you know that you can know this if the system is transparent in nature. If the person who are involved at formulating policy and who are involved in implementation of the policy, they are made accountable, that you for example, if some authority had to perform survey in 1000 houses, so whether that person has conducted survey or not, right. So, this is there. So, we have seen basically what are policies, how policies are being formulated, what are the issues related to policy formulation, then how policy are implemented, what are the issues related to policy implementation, and what are the measures which can be taken for the better policy formulation or better policy implementation. One of the best example is there for the policy formulation as well as the policy implementation is aspirational district program, right. What is this aspirational district program? Aspirational district programs was launched in 2018 with the aim to transform the district. How has this been identified? Why is this aspirational district program? Because there are various districts in India which is still not growing at a pace, at faster pace for its growth and development, right. So, therefore, Government of India or the Niti Aayog identified this aspirational district program, aspirational districts which need to be strengthened, right, which there should be capacity building in this aspirational district programs. For example, in various sectors, for example, in health sector, education sector, different sectors, right. So, what are the weightage which is being given? And one more important thing is, see the term aspirational. Now, these districts are backward districts, right, but they have taken the term positive terms, that is aspirational district. So, once you declare a district as aspirational district, at one first thought it says that there is something good about this district. So, it is a motivating factor in the district that they are under the aspirational district program. But in reality, these were the districts which need to have more focus because they were not developing or not growing at the faster pace, right. And what has been the weightage? There is 30% weightage of health and nutrition, 30% to the education, 20% to agriculture and water resources, 10% to the financial inclusion and skill development, and 10% to the basic infrastructure. So, based on this weightage, there has been 112 aspirational district which has been identified, and currently in 112 districts this aspirational district program is being run. So, they will be targeting on various sectors, on various aspects, and will try to develop or try to have growth in every sector, so that overall this district should be uplifted. So that overall the citizen of this district should have better quality of life, they should have better human development index, right. And the scheme was launched in 2018. How would you understand? How would you know that some district has been uplifted or not? So there is also a delta ranking. What will this delta ranking do? This delta ranking, based on these parameters or several parameters, it will create a rank that which district is performing better, right. For example, in 2022 Haridwar district had topped in the delta ranking. So this means that Haridwar is performing in excellent manner in among all the districts, right. So this is delta ranking, and this has been based on the several parameters. So overall the intention of this policy is to have a setup, to have a collaboration between various districts, to have a comprehensive plan for the growth and development of certain districts, this 112 districts. And what are the models which are being followed? So the broad contour of the program is to have convergence between what? Central government schemes and the state government schemes. For example, even for the food distribution, there is National Food Security Act at the central level, but there are several states, for example Chhattisgarh, for example Tamil Nadu, who has separate food distribution system, who has separate food distribution schemes or plans, in which they provide more food items, right. And even in many cases the quantity of food being provided is more. So there should be convergence between these schemes, right. Then there is collaboration, there should be collaboration at the central level, at state level, at the Prabhari officer, at the district collectors. So there should be collaboration at every level, so that there should not be any communication mismatch, so that there should be decentralized way of policy implementation as well as the policy formulation as well as the policy implementation, and similarly at the policy evaluation level also. Just now we have discussed this, and aspirational district program is one of the best examples to show that how policy should be formulated and how policy should be implemented. Then there is competition among the district driven by a spirit of the mass movement. Now this is a mass movement obviously, because in 100 in total India has 640 districts, which has in total how much population? 140 billion population, but among that 640, 112 district has been included. So you can see that near about 1/5 of the population is being already targeted, right. So 1/5 of the population is being targeted. So this is a mass movement, right. At the same time, as we are having this delta ranking, so there is some sense of competition among the district, right. Similarly, like Sustainable Development Index, which is also being published by the Niti Aayog. So the states are in competition among one another, that which state will be performing better. Similarly, in the aspirational district program also, this due to this delta ranking, there is a sense of competition among different districts, that who will top or which state will have higher number of the district in delta ranking, right. So is there. Then monitoring, there is real time progress is being monitored through this schemes aspirational in the aspirational district program. Real time monitoring, there is use of the GPS system, and there is another fully digitization is there. Then updation of the progress at every step is there. So there can be real time monitoring that whether there is any district is in the growth path or not. Then the district collector will have the latest available data. So by using this data, there can be better policy formulation. By using this data, there can be better policy implementation. If the data suggests that certain district is lacking behind education sector, if the data suggests that certain district is lacking behind in health and nutrition, then that specific sectors can be targeted, right. So this data collected by the district collector is very much important. Then there is dashboard open to the public, where the public can also give their feedback. So public participation is also there in aspirational district program, as well as there is dynamic. This policy is not static in nature, it is dynamic in nature, because the parameters in the because the target beneficiaries, because the this techniques, all these things can be modified according to the time, according to the real time data, right. Such is there. In last year ranking 2022, Haridwar has got the first rank. We had discussed this, right. So this is the this is about the aspirational district programs. You must have seen that whatever we have read in the policy formulation or policy implementation part, that is directly or indirectly coming up here, isn't it? And also here, because this convergence, collaboration, competition, these things had been included while policy formulation, and these things had been done during policy implementation, right. So for any given policy, you should, we have seen the basic structure, we have seen the basic features, which should, on the lines of which you need to think for any policy, whether it is asked that how has been Janani Shishu Suraksha scheme has been performing, or how has been this Matritva scheme has been performing. So you will have to think on this line and generate points regarding that, and if you have some data regarding that, then put that in the example, right. For example, we will see how this Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme. So as the scheme suggests, first you need to bachao the beti, and then you need to padhao the beti, right. India has the problem of female infanticides. Near about 90 lakh female child has been, the female infanticide problem has been there in 3 to 4 years, right, and the number is 90 lakh, right. So female infanticides is there. Beti Padhao, because either because of the lack of infrastructure, or because of the mindset, or because of the societal pressure, most of the times what happens that Beti of the nation, the daughter of the nation, or the girl child had to opt out or the drop out from the school, even at the primary level, even at the secondary level, even at the national level, sorry, even at the higher education level, right. So to avoid that, this is the scheme Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, right. This much is clear. Now if you see what has been the this Beti Bachao Beti Padhao schemes has been formulated, and it has been based on decentralized manner, it is has been based, the people participation has been taken in while formulating and the implementing the process. And what are being the achievement of the Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao? So there has been a significant increase in the sex ratio at the birth, means out of the 640 district covered under the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, and 640 district, that means approximately whole India is being covered under the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao. It has been found that the 422 district has shown improvement in the sex ratio at the birth from 2014-15 to 2018-19. So now see, we have need what? Evaluation, policy evaluation, survey, isn't it? We had read. So this survey or policy evaluation says that this Beti Bachao Beti Padhao had reflected that the sex ratio at the birth has improved in 422 district covered under the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao schemes in the time period of 2014-15 to 2018-19. Another parameters, for example, institutional delivery. So the percentage of institutional delivery has shown an improving trend from 87% in 2014-19 to 94% in 2019-20. So if you are talking about the percentage of institutional delivery in 2019-20, it is 94%. So only by 2020, only 6% of the female were left out from the institutional delivery, which is a marvelous achievement, right? Then if you see at the gross enrollment ratio, then also the gross enrollment ratio of the girls in the school at the secondary level has improved from 77.45 in 2014-15 to 81.32 as per the Unified District Information System of Education provisional data. So this also suggests that there has been gross enrollment ratio of the girl child in the at school in secondary level, right? Most of the times girl child opt out, drop out from the secondary level, because once they pass out the secondary level and they reach at the higher education level, then there are less chances of being dropping out. Highest possibility is to drop out after primary school, right? So this is the mentality of this. So we can say that by launching the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao schemes, it can be said that the schemes has been successful in many of the cases. For example, in the sex ratio has been improved, institutional delivery has been improved, and there has been improvement in the gross enrollment ratio, right? Now there cannot be any schemes without issues. There cannot be any schemes or any programs without issues. So what are the issues related to Beti Bachao Beti Padhao schemes? So there is underutilization of fund. We had seen that most of the case there is insufficient allocation of the fund, but here it is different. The fund has been allocated because it is one of the pet project of the our Prime Minister. That's why enough fund has been allocated for this scheme. So the fund has been allocated, but the state government has not utilized the fund properly, or even only 45% of the fund allocated under the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme in 5 years of the 2015-16 to 19-20 has been utilized, right? So this shows the underutilization of the fund. So what need to be done? There is need to be the program and government schemes need to be implemented in much better manner, faster manner, so that whatever the fund allocation is there, that can reach their benefits can be reached out to the sections, targeted sections, or the Beti of the nation, right? Then there is lack of proper monitoring. We had just talked about in the aspirational district program, their monitoring system was quite good. There was real time monitoring, right? But in this scheme, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao schemes, there is no real time monitoring, or there is no proper monitoring in the schemes, and for that matter there cannot be better feedback mechanism, right. How would you know that this Beti Bachao Beti Padhao schemes is being implemented in better manner every day or every week or every month, right. You had this achievement while 5 years time period, but if you do not have real time monitoring, how would you know that whether the schemes is being implemented in proper manner or not? Because once in a 5 years, if you will have survey, then only you can find out that whether it has been implemented, whether it had been implemented in proper manner or not. So that is a post-mortem thing. But if you have real time monitoring for the every district, then you can say that whether this district has been performing in better manner or not, right. Then there are high dropout rates. The average dropout rates of girls are 17.3% at the secondary education level and 4.74% at the elementary level in 2018-19. So it is talking about one certain year. We had seen here the gross enrollment ratio. This gross enrollment ratio. Enrollment ratio is what? The admission has increased. The admission has increased, but admission has been done after 3-4 years. This dropout is also increasing. So there is not much. If the girl is dropping out at the secondary level, we just had discussed this, that most of the dropouts take place at the secondary level because of the patriarchal nature of the mindset, because of the behavioral nature, right, and because of the lack of infrastructure, isn't it? So because of this, it has been found that in 2018-19, 17.3% of the secondary education level, 17.3% of secondary education level, there has been dropout in the secondary level. Okay. Then another is unbalanced expenditure pattern. In 2017-18, about 43% of the average is allocated for media campaign at the national level, and another at the 4% of the campaign at the district level, but only about 5% each in the allocated for the education and its health. See what is happening. For the media coverage of the Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao schemes, there has been allocation of fund for the 43% allocation at the national level and 4% at the district level. So 47% goes only for the media coverage of the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao schemes. But the real problem is health, education. So these are the real problems for which, in which the girl child or the Beti need to be uplifted. For that matter, only 5%, that is 5% for the health, 5% for the education has been allocated, and for only for the media coverage 47% fund has been allocated. In that two manner, 45% funds has been underutilized. So this you can highlight that overall achievement is showing that Beti Bachao Beti Padhao is being implemented in a good manner, but as there are several issues related to this also, so it need to be implemented in better manner. You can also suggest what should be the solution. For example, there should be real time monitoring, there should be fund allocation, more fund allocation in health and education sector and in other sector in which right now fund is lacking, right. So all these things can be written in the mains exam, right. So this will be our first topic of public policy related things. We had just discussed this. We will carry on in the second class, where we will be covering this development related things and role of NGOs, SSG and other institutions, right. Please stay tuned. Thank you very much.